Denise Roach has been calling for a long time.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I rise to take my first call in the Committee of the Whole House for the Local Government Auckland Transitional Provisions Amendment Bill. And I do note that we are on Part 1, the substantive amendments, and I will restrict my comments to this part of the bill. Sir, Clause 4 talks about reducing the quorum of the hearing sessions from 3 to 2. And if we look through Part 1, the amendments are around appointing more hearings commissioners, and the reason for that, essentially, and we should go back to the reason for that, is basically so that they can get through the hearings process more quickly than they would with the current total panel of just 7 members. And so Clause 4 talks about reducing the quorum from 3 to 2, which means that you can get through a lot more of the hearings quicker. I share the concerns that I think have been raised by other members of this House about what happens when you have those 2 hearings commissioners deliberating and they can't make a decision because they're equally split. And I guess I would like to hear from the Minister what they have in mind would be the answer to that quandary. Because what we know is that the deliberation process is where a lot of the decisions get made, and they are based on the weight of numbers. But if it's equally weighted, then I guess then we've got a problem. Sir, I would also like to talk about why we actually need to have this done in such a quick time frame. When really this is the biggest unitary plan, the biggest use of the RMA planning processes ever to be had in New Zealand. And one would have thought that there would have been a lot more care taken with deciding who would be on the hearings panels, consulting around who will be on the hearings panels, deciding who will be on the hearings panels, and then actually taking the time to hear the submissions. And we know, sir, that there are about 5,000 more submissions that are yet to be heard, but the government has set up an arbitrary date of a report and recommendation being need to be back to council by July next year. And Part 1, we note, does actually specify that that report can be made in bits, so that as one section of the plan is covered off with the hearings, that the hearings panels can actually make their recommendations on that part alone, and basically just sort of drip feed the decisions and the recommendations as they come through. We don't necessarily have a problem with that. What we do have a problem is this sort of retrospective fixing up of mistakes that were made with the original legislation, and the need for this bill being pushed through under urgency to fix up those mistakes. So I want to talk about Phil Twyford's amendments, and I just note that there is a new one on the table as well, which I will probably ask one of my colleagues who was more focused on the original legislation around the RMA, who probably would like to comment on that newest supplementary order paper that's just come through. But I want to talk about Phil Twyford's amendment around ensuring the Mayor, in conjunction with the Minister of the Environment, make decisions about the appointment of the extra three hearings commissioners. Now, the basis of our opposition to the whole bill, this bill, is basically because the appointment process has been driven by the government rather than by the council. And we note that it does say that the council will, that the government, the minister, will consult with both the Māori Statutory Board and with the council. However, consultation is way different from decision making, and I guess we see that a lot in this House, where basically submissions are ignored quite frequently by the decision makers. And I worry as well that that may be the result of the plan that we end up with, given the huge process that preceded the whole draft plan being. Mr. Chair.
Member will resume her seat. Before I call another member, I will just indicate to the House that I've been advised both from my left and the right that the advice on the question of the Bill of Rights vet is available now on the Ministry of Justice website, and no issues have been raised. Matt, do